I'm Mark Tier, the founder and CEO of Black Spectacles. We took a couple of months off to rework ARE Live, and I'm so pleased and so excited to be back at it with all of you. In today's episode, we're going to review several PjM, also known as project management mock exam questions with architect Thomas Tumelty. We're going to go through questions that cover PjM knowledge and skills related to understanding the intricacies of architect and consultant agreements, and how these agreements relate to AIA contracts and more. So it should be a great session. I have a bunch of great stuff to share with you. So if you're joining us for the first time, Black Spectacles was the first comprehensive online learning platform for the ARE back when we launched in 2012. And as a leader in ARE prep, we've spent the last 3 years rebuilding all of our learning content and platform for you, so you can be sure that you'll pass the ARE the first time. What makes Black Spectacles unique, in addition to us being the only ARE prep provider to have partnered with AIA National back in the day and to have had all of our ARE prep courses approved under NCARB's approved test prep provider program, is that we've adopted the principles and standards of learning science to rebuild all of our learning content and platform. That means that you can trust that you're studying the right topics for the exams and that you're going to retain that information so you can walk into the exams with swagger, knowing you're going to pass the exams on the first try. You know, we used to be known as sort of the first online provider for the ARE, backed by the AIA. Then we became known for our industry-leading practice exams, and now we're known as the one-stop shop for passing the ARE, the only resource you need to pass the exams the first time. And of course, we back that up with our ARE guarantee. So really excited to have you all here and to be able to share that with you. I'm also excited to announce something brand new. We're going to advance to the next slide here, which is our referral program, where you'll receive a $50 gift card of your choice for every friend that you refer. And your friend will receive a 10% discount off their membership. So this is something brand new that we're introducing. There's a whole collection of different gift cards and so forth that you can choose, you know, Starbucks and Uber and so forth. So lots of options there. In addition, something also brand new is we're offering a referral program for firms. And all you have to do is introduce us via email to leadership at your firm. And if they sign up, we'll give you a $250 gift card. Literally, you can earn $250 from sending one email. Super easy. So here's how it works. All you have to do, and the information's right here on the screen, is send an email to sales@blackspectacles.com and introduce us to your HR leader or your managing principal or whomever you think makes the decision in your office about providing test prep resources, and we'll follow up. And if your firm signs up, we'll send you a $250 gift card of your choice. So open up your email right now and send a quick intro note to sales@blackspectacles.com and your firm leader, and we'll take it from there. If you want to learn a little bit more about the referral program, visit blackspectacles.com/referral and start earning rewards today. So big update there in terms of our referral program. For our next ARE live session, we're going to be covering the PPD exam, one of the beasts, as you all know. We're going to be doing that on November 16th of 2023. So I'd encourage all of you right now to type in blackspectacles.com/podcast and register for that right now. And again, as always, we always send out the recording afterwards. So even if you're not able to attend, we'll send you the recording if you're registered. We just dropped the link in right here so you can register. Today we're kind of doing a throwback. We're going to be engaging exclusively on our online ARE community. So head over to community.blackspectacles.com and go to right at the top. You'll see we've pinned a thread right there. And everyone who posts in that thread today will be eligible to win a free Black Spectacles t-shirt. Literally all you have to do is go over to community.blackspectacles.com and say hi, and boom, you're registered. But that's also where we're going to be answering questions. So if you have a question as we're going through this today, post your question there and we will answer your questions there. And of course, don't forget to stay tuned until the end of the episode to see if you've won. All right. I think that's it for all of my introductions. Looks like Bryn has said hello. Hello. How are you? LabCAD 111. That is the awesomest name in the whole world I've ever seen. Thank you. Welcome. Who else is gonna log into our community and say hello? If you haven't done it yet, hop over. Oops, somebody else is. Who is it? Someone's typing in. So it should be fun to chat with all of you. Oh, hello, Heather, from tuning in from Central Arkansas. So again, type in community.blackspectacles.com, grab that first post. Hey, Shannon from Colorado, grab that first post, say hello, and then, of course, any questions you have, drop them in here. Our community is a place where you can, anytime, 24/7, you can ask a technical question as you're studying. And we have licensed architects who tune in and receive those questions. And when we receive them, we look up that question and get you a good, competent answer. So it's great to see as I don't know how to say that, as Godoki from SLC and Perez saying hello. Good to see all of you. Thanks for tuning in. I think I see Kristen Barrero. What's up, Kristen? Good to see you. Is that Kristen? That Kristen Barrero that I know? That's awesome. Good to see all of you tuned in. So with that, I'm going to introduce our honored guest today, Thomas Tumelty. In addition to working with us here at Black Spectacles, Thomas is an architect based in New York City. He's also an adjunct assistant professor at the New York Institute of Technology. He's a marathon runner. He took the exams 2 years ago, and I think it's important to note that he's a marathon runner, which means he's got a lot of toughness, which probably helped him get through those exams 2 years ago. So with that, Thomas, I welcome you and hand over the mic to you.
Great. Thank you, Mark. And thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to walk through some questions today. So I know a lot of you are actively studying for this exam, and I'm so happy that you're joining today. And just a quick disclaimer, everything we're going through today is just for educational purposes. None of this content is from the actual exam. It's just custom questions working through the AIAC 401 contract. So as we go through these, we'll definitely be fielding questions, so definitely feel free to jot them down in the chat, but I'm going to dive right into this and we'll get started. So an architect has hired a structural engineer to work on a university laboratory. The architect is utilizing the AIA C401 standard form of agreement between architect and consultant. When the laboratory reaches substantial completion, the owner decides to move in equipment and use some of the areas when they notice the slab begins to deflect when fully loaded. After further investigation, the architect finds that the backgrounds issued to the consultant included the laboratory equipment layouts. How should the owner proceed? So I'll give a second or two just for you guys to think about that, meditate on it, and then we'll look through the answer here. Okay, so let's go through this together. And if you guys have questions, definitely feel free to ask. So the correct answer is actually going to be A in this case. Hold the structural engineer responsible because they did not accommodate the equipment in their load calculations. So in the question, it's always good to kind of dissect these questions, right? Like, what are the keywords that they're being used and what are the hints that they're giving us that are kind of our clues to work with? The big thing here is that the architect did provide the layouts to the consultant, right? So it was in the background, it was available for them to see. And if there were any questions about it, it should have been raised to the architect to be further clarified. But because that wasn't the case, there is a little bit of dropping the ball here. This kind of falls under a very specific article in the contract. So this is the C401, Article 2, and that's under the consultant's responsibilities. So, and I'll read straight from the passage just so you guys know where it is. So it's Article 2, 2.1. The consultant shall perform its services consistent with the professional skill and care ordinarily provided by professionals practicing in the same or similar, locally under the same or similar circumstances. The consultant shall perform its services as expeditiously as is consistent with such professional skill and care for the orderly progress of the project. Now that falls under also this kind of standard of care discussion, right? Standard of care also applies to architects, and it's very clearly outlined in the other contracts. The B101 and A201 are other really important contracts to read for this exam. So definitely read through them. And I always recommend read through these contracts in their entirety. Like, cover to cover. It is worth it. It's definitely going to be something you need to be familiar with, and try to think of like hypothetical situations as you go through that can relate to some of these things that are being described. Because contracts, they're a little bit dense, right? They're very kind of specific language and they're a little bit hard to dissect. So think of a situation that it can apply to. And in your own professional work, try to see situations that you can kind of say, that is a very specific situation that I know exactly where to go to in the contract to resolve it, right? Because we're always going to be referring back to the contract as kind of the foundation by which we respond and really to inform how we respond to certain things. So the standard of care, I just want to throw out one of my favorite definitions of it that I think is really clear. So the standard of care is a legal concept defined as the level of skill and diligence that a reasonably prudent architect would exercise in the same community, in the same time frame, and given the same or similar facts and circumstances. So it's really setting up a standard, right? Hence the name, but it's something to compare to from a legal standpoint, right? If an architect makes a mistake, we have to have a baseline to compare it to know that that is a mistake, right? So that's why we have this setup. And an architect should be cautious about raising that standard of care, right? So for example, the architect may agree to the inclusion of statements that might be like, we'll be delivering this project with the highest standards or similar language. We have to be careful that in saying things like that, we're not actually raising the standard of care, right? By promising or guaranteeing something. So definitely something to keep in mind while working through these questions. And then on to our next question. So
maybe Thomas, before we jump over,
sure.
I'm looking in our community right now. I don't see any questions related to that particular mock exam question. If anyone has one, don't hesitate to jump over to where we're having a discussion, community.blackspectacles.com. It's the first post pinned at the top. Hop in there and drop a question in there. But I don't see any right now, so if you guys have any others, feel free to do so as we move along. But I guess go right ahead.
Okay, great. So on to our next question. So an architect has hired a landscape architect under the C401 agreement. The owner has provided the lot description that includes the property line extents and siding of the building. The consultant requests from the architect a topographic survey that can be used to study drainage patterns and inform the placement of landscape elements. How should the architect respond? So we have a few options here. The owner provided adequate information, so this is not required for the landscape architect to fulfill their task. This request is reasonable, and the consultant should reach out to the owner directly to obtain the survey. Or C, the architect should request a topographic survey from the client. And D, the architect should request a topological survey from the client and bill the consultant for the cost incurred by the owner. Okay, so let's go through this together, just in terms of like, what is the best protocol? And a lot of these contracts are all about that, right? It's like, how do we take the proper sequence and who is liable in certain situations, who is responsible for performing tasks? And most importantly, what are the proper channels of communication, right? We have to be really sure that, a consultant, should they be talking to the owner? Should they be talking to the contractor? In most cases, no. Usually it's through the architect, right? Because they are contracted directly with them. And if we see that the C401 is mentioned, we know that it's an arrangement where the consultant is with the architect directly. So the correct answer here is going to be the architect should request a topographic survey from the client. And this is going back to a very specific section in the contract, specifically section 2.3 of the C401 agreement. So the consultant shall recommend to the architect the appropriate investigations, surveys, test analysis reports, and the services of other consultants that should be obtained for the proper execution of the consultant's services. The consultant shall review the information provided by the architect and shall promptly notify the architect if the consultant needs further information to perform its services. So this is definitely something that's within reason that they can request, but it's something that the architect can then go to the client with and explain the reason for it. Some of the other options here are just not kind of the best choice, right? The owner provided adequate information, so this is not required for the landscape architect to fulfill their task. The landscape architect is saying they do need more information, right? So they can't really dismiss that, right? It has to be addressed. So A is a little bit too absolute. It's kind of just saying, no, we're not going to do that. But C definitely is more along the lines of what we would do in a situation like that. And then B, this request is reasonable, and the consultant should reach out to the owner directly to obtain the survey per the contract. That communication should happen through the architect. And then D, the architect should request a topological survey from the client and bill the consultant for the costs incurred by the owner. That's also incorrect, right? Because we are going to have these situations where we need more information, and contractually the owner is obligated to provide information about the site itself, right? So we can rule that one out as well. One thing on just like general test taking strategy, process of elimination is really key, because it takes a lot of time to kind of vet all of the answer choices, and it can be really effective to say, I'm going to look for 3 of the incorrect answer choices first, just rule them out immediately. And then even if you can narrow it down to 2 choices, then it concentrates your energy on just those 2, right? Because some you're going to say in 30 seconds, like, I know that's wrong, right? I'm not even going to dwell on that. So just to keep in mind. Okay.
Awesome. I don't think we have any questions in the community right now. I do see one that just came in about question 1. We'll circle back to that at the end. So thank you for posting. I'm not sure how to say your name, but K Shepro Design. Thank you for posting. We'll catch that one in a little bit. Go right ahead.
Sounds great. So question number 3. So the mechanical engineer for the project is working towards their design development set when the structural engineer flags that one of their ducts is too large to penetrate a beam at the depth noted in the structural drawings. Happens a lot. Sometimes there are conflicts, and we have to discuss them and kind of work through what are the options to move forward. The mechanical engineer insists the deadline is too near to coordinate this item and ignores the structural engineer's request. So we have these situations sometimes where things get a little bit into the realm of just realistic situations, right, that we have to address through the contract itself, right? We have to kind of go back to the section and see what was agreed to in order to push back. So there are 2 weeks before the DD submission. How should the architect advise the team to proceed? So we have a couple of options here. The mechanical engineer is justified, and this should be coordinated in CD documents based on the time constraint. B, the architect should advise the structural engineer that this should have been flagged sooner and delay the DD submission as needed. C, remind the structural engineer that they are required to coordinate with other consultants, and given that there are 2 weeks until the deadline, this leaves adequate time. Or D, the mechanical engineer is not required to coordinate with the structural engineer. This is the role of the architect. So let's go through this one together. So we have a lot of options here, a lot of different scenarios that we can kind of pursue, but there's really one that is going to be most reasonable. And that's going to be C. So remind the structural engineer that they are required to coordinate with other consultants. And given that there are 2 weeks until the deadline, this leaves adequate time. That's more than reasonable. And that is also per a very specific section in the contract. If you refer to C401, section 2.4, the consultant shall coordinate its services with those of the architect and other consultants, right? So it's not just with the architect. They are also supposed to work with the team and facilitate the process. Further in that section, it goes on to say the purpose of that is to avoid unreasonable delay in the orderly and sequential progress of the architect's or other consultants' services. The consultant shall coordinate all aspects of its design of the work for this portion of the project with the work designed by the architect and other consultants as necessary for the proper coordination of the project. So definitely a good one to keep in mind in terms of we can really ask our consultants to, if there's resistance, to really move forward for the project. And we mentioned earlier some of the key terms that are in the body of the question. So here, they mentioned it's a design development set. So, if worse comes to worse, there is a little bit of time to capture these things in the CD documents. But we have another issue where it's a tight deadline, right? We're kind of down to the wire here. And it would be kind of a good thing to coordinate before CDs, because if this doesn't work, you may have to lower a ceiling. There might be additional things that have to be taken into account that would have kind of a domino effect on the rest of the design. So it is very important. And our timeline, right? So we mentioned 2 weeks. Definitely, that's more than enough time for a consultant to incorporate a change like that. Okay, so let's go on to our next question. And I just wanted to note real quick, just in terms of like, as you're working towards your, through your study journey, really do a lot of practice questions and like do a lot of practice exams. Black Spectacles, we have all of these different practice exams. They're really great to go through, and try to do one like as you get close to the exam, like one per week, just like really do as many as possible, because it's one thing to read these contracts. It's another thing entirely to apply that knowledge to a very specific scenario, right? Because there's a lot of gray areas. Sometimes there's no clear answer. Sometimes you have to choose the best of the worst, so there's a lot of different ways of interpreting these. Alrighty, on to our next question. So the architect notices that the stone consultant hasn't issued their commercial general liability policy with the proper limits. When the architect approaches the issue, the stone consultant says they aren't required to carry the monetary limits the architect is referring to. How should the architect respond? So we have different options here. So A, give notice that the architect will need to terminate their services. B, provide the section of the contract that outlines insurance requirements. C, since the contract doesn't include insurance requirements, reach out to the consultant's insurance company for additional information. Or the consultant does not need to disclose this information, right? So we kind of see all different options in terms of like, yes, no, not even included kind of thing in the contract. Okay, so let's walk through this one together. For this one, actually, if you guys want to put down your guess, oh, I see. Yeah, okay, great. You guys are already ahead of me. Okay, you're putting in your answer choices. So we have BBBs. Okay. Okay. Any other guesses on this one? Okay, wow, we were all aligned here. Okay, great. We have like 15 Bs. So that is correct. Yes, provide the section of the contract that outlines insurance requirements. And this is also in a very specific section of the contract, section 2.8. The consultant should maintain the following insurance for the duration of the agreement. And they go through, it's like 2.8.1 all the way through 2.8.6. And it very clearly lists commercial general liability, automobile liability, workers' compensation, employer's liability, and also professional liability, and also with the coverage amounts, right? So there's a lot of information that the consultant can fill in that might be very specific, to this project in general. Okay, any questions on that one, or any of the ones we've gone through?
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions here, Thomas. I'm going to start with Kevin, who's over in our ARE community. He says, I'm curious so he goes back to question number one. We have two questions for question number one. The first question, Kevin says, I'm curious where there is any language in the question that described the architect providing the adequate equipment information. It seemed to me that the fault could have landed on the architect for not providing the equipment information to the structural engineer. Curious what you think there, Thomas.
Yeah, that's a great question. So absolutely, that is information that can be provided. But the biggest thing is that we need to have a clear understanding of what's being in that space. Like, what is the layout? What are kind of the understanding of the type of equipment? Because sometimes what will happen is that you may not even know what the equipment really is yet. Right, you might just know that it's a laboratory. You might just know that it's generally like a mechanical room. And in schematic design or design development, you may not have the full spec for it yet. It might just be a little bit of a placeholder. So there's kind of this evolution throughout the design process where we're kind of starting conceptually, of course, and then each deliverable, every submission that we do, SD, DD, CD, is going to add another layer of detail, right, to kind of build on it. So at this point, we can definitely, ideally, we want to have that information available. But in case we don't, if there's still a little bit of a gray area, at the very least, we need to have the space where it is provided, and we can have definitely an estimate on the loads that the engineer can work to. But the key is that the engineer has the information available to ask the question, right? Because they see it on the layouts, they see the name of certain equipment, and as part of like the obligations to clarify things along the process, they should ask that question then of like, okay, what are the loads here that we should be designing to? And then the architect can provide that. If, let's say there was another scenario where let's say the engineer didn't have the proper, let's say there was just like a code mistake, right? Like let's say they weren't following the code correctly and there was an issue and they had to rip out part of the project and redo it. In that case, that falls on them, right? Because they didn't interpret the code in the correct way. But let's say the architect provided the wrong code, right? At the beginning of the project, everyone's kind of meeting, they're saying, we're working to the IBC, and it turns out there's a more local code or like a very specific code that they had to be working to. But all this time they weren't. Then that actually falls on the architect, right? Because they are responsible for providing the correct kind of family of documents and codes that the team should be working to. But the interpretation of the consultant's own scope of work, that falls under, their responsibility.
Awesome. Thank you there, Thomas. Kevin, I tried to put an answer in the area community. So I think I did a good job, my best job of interpreting what you said there, Thomas. We did have one more question about question number 1, which was from Aslan, who said, in the first question, although the structural is ultimately responsible, this is, I guess, sort of a slight variation on Kevin's question. Why didn't, basically, although the structural is ultimately responsible, why didn't the owner hold the architect liable, seeing that their contract is with the architect and not necessarily with the structural engineer? I guess maybe there's sort of a little nuance to how those contracts kind of work that might be helpful to talk through, Thomas.
Yeah, so definitely so that is part of, and actually that's a good, that is a note I wanted to make today, is kind of the obligations kind of shift from the consultant, like the consultant's obligations to the architect mirror the obligations the architect has to the owner. And I want to read one part of the contract of the C401 that's really important for that describes it. So to the extent the provisions of the prime agreement apply to this portion of the project, and the prime agreement is going to be the agreement between the owner and the architect, the architect shall assume towards the consultant all obligations and responsibilities that the owner assumes towards the architect. And the consultant shall assume towards the architect all obligations and responsibilities that the architect assumes towards the owner. Kind of a little bit of a tongue twister of like, you're dealing with the owner and the architect, and then separately the architect and the consultant. But essentially, as I was mentioning, like we're mirroring those requirements. So in this case, we have this kind of almost like this tiered arrangement where if there is a mistake that happens, in this case, the consultant didn't pick up those drawings, then that's going to still fall on them. But if we have a situation where there's like, let's say there's a project delay because of this, right? And that has like a certain amount of, the owner's not happy, there's cost associated with that, then that gets really kind of tricky, right? Because then that's more of like the architect as a unit with their team is delaying the project, right? And in that case, that might actually fall on the architect in that situation. But in terms of the, in this case, like the liability, if those slabs are deflecting and they have to be taken out, then the engineer is going to have to really address that. That's going to, because in theory, the architect did provide enough coordination documents to flag that issue.
All right, beautiful. Well, let's see here. I think we did it. I have a few things I need to share with all of you before we jump off.
Sure.
First,
I'm going to go to the last slides.
Awesome. Yeah, and we're going to share a couple of links here with you, which we've already shown, but I want to make sure you all see these. So first, we're going to be covering the PPD exam at our next ARE Live podcast on November 16th, which is really only about 2 weeks away, a little more. So go to blackspectacles.com/podcast to sign up. Looks like last time I looked, we had already 50 people signed up for it. So I'd encourage all of you to sign up, because we'll send you the recording afterward, even if you're not able to come. So I'd encourage you with that. To sign up for the next podcast. I mentioned the update to our products. I guess the key thing I just want to make sure you all know is we've done a lot of work over the last 3 years rebuilding all of our learning content and platform, so you can be sure you'll pass the ARE the first time. And I think the key thing I'd love for you to walk away is what makes Black Spectacles unique is that we've adopted the principles and standards of learning science. And what that means to you is that you can be confident you're studying the right topics for the exam, and that you're going to retain that information so you can pass the exams on the first try. We may have been known in the past as the first online provider for the ARE. Then we were known for being backed by the AIA, and then our industry-leading practice exams. And now we're known as the one-stop shop for passing the ARE, which we back up with our guarantee. I want to tell you about our referral program and then talk about the t-shirt giveaway, so don't leave yet. We announced today our new referral program. It's pretty simple. There's 2 ways you can earn a gift card or a discount for yourself. First of all, if you refer a friend, you'll receive a $50 gift card of your choice for every friend that you refer. So if you refer 10 friends, that's $500 in gift cards. Your friend will get something too. They'll receive a 10% discount off their membership. So everybody wins there. The second thing, though, that I think is really exciting is we're offering a referral program if you refer your firm. All you have to do is introduce us via email to leadership at your firm. And if they sign up, we'll give you a $250 gift card. Literally, all you have to do is send an email and you can earn $250. All you have to do is email sales@blackspectacles.com, introduce us to your HR leader or managing principal, or whomever you think makes the decision in your office, and we'll follow up. And if your firm signs up, we'll send you a $250 gift card of your choice. So to learn more about our new referral programs, visit blackspectacles.com/referral and start earning rewards today. I mentioned that we would be engaging exclusively in the ARE community, and that everyone who posts in the thread is eligible to win a free t-shirt. Today's lucky winner of a Black Spectacles t-shirt is Kevin. Kevin will reach out to you via email to get your size and shipping information. Thank you to you and to everybody else who participated and engaged in our community. And remember, our ARE community is not just for ARE Live. It's really there for you as a resource, a free resource to ask any kind of questions you might have. We have our licensed architects on staff who will answer any questions that you might have. I want to thank Thomas for putting together these questions and presenting today. It's an honor to work with you. I want to also invite all of you to stick around for a few minutes to take our survey and share any suggestions or feedback that you may have. We read every word that you write and use all your feedback to tune our next episodes. But thanks for watching.